JB Knowledge Podcast Network.
On episode 51 of the Insuretech Geek Podcast, talking about carrier subsidized technology with Josh Kanner from Smartvid. The Insuretech Geek Podcast, powered by JB Knowledge, is all about technology that's transforming and disrupting the insurance world. We'll be interviewing guests and doing deep dives into specific tech we see changing the industry. We're taking you on a journey through insurance tech, so enjoy the ride and geek out. Here we are. Another week in the books. It's almost March. We're towards the tail end of the first quarter of 21. Last time I checked, it was the beginning of 2020. I don't know what happened in the last 12 months, but I don't remember any of it. You know, I think one of the reasons I tend to be so positive and like just kind of enjoy every day is I have a terrible memory. And so I just don't remember a lot of things really well, historically speaking. I remember like weird, obscure details, but Josh, I mean, have you noticed that, like, I think people with happier dispositions just have fuzzier memories about things? We tend to gloss over them a little bit, maybe?
You sound like my wife, James. That's really true. She thinks of herself as my outsourced memory, and it's very useful in that respect. She's always there to remind me, but I try and stay happy too, man. To try and stay happy.
Yeah, I guess we had a pandemic for the last year. I guess it started a year ago. I mean, a year ago I was in New Orleans in Mardi Gras, and I had a ball. Literally, I was at the Muse Ball, and I got to listen to the B-52s. It was the last in-person concert I got to go to. No, it was not the last. The very last in-person concert I went to was at Con Expo, which was almost exactly a year. I called it Corona Fest 2020 because it was like a bunch. Right. It was 150,000 construction pros all hanging out together.
Question about whether or not that should happen, and then some companies they didn't send people to it.
Yeah,
yeah.
Well, they were like, tense. No, we're not going to go, and so they didn't send anybody. And there was transmission there. Like I knew people from Autodesk that got sick, and I mean it was kind of a funny deal, but. They hilariously, they ended it one day early because, like, as if that would have any impact on anything at all, you know?
Yeah.
It didn't, you know, but they only have Con Expo once every 3 years. And so I understand their thinking. Looking back on it, my gosh, like hindsight's so 2020. We never should have shut anything down. We just should have started wearing masks all the time.
Yeah.
And you look back at it and it's just wild because the one thing that is actually proven to be useful they were telling us not to do in the beginning, which is to put a mask on.
Right. It's ridiculous. It's funny, James. I saw the coronavirus outbreak through the eyes also of my sister-in-law, who's native Chinese. Like she came from mainland China, went to grad school here, married my brother-in-law, and she was in disbelief that no one wore masks at the beginning of the coronavirus.
Yeah,
she couldn't believe it. And by the way, China went through with SARS. She reminded us China went into lockdown. In high school, she was at home watching school lessons on TV.
Yeah.
They basically turned Chinese TV into a way to teach the kids back when SARS happened. Anyway, but yeah, so she was like, "You guys are idiots. You got to wear masks. That's it."
Got mine right here, man. I'm a pro mask guy. You know, put it on. It's a weird deal. I mean, you know, it's at the point now. A year ago, everybody was saying, "Oh, there's only a few cases." Like, I don't know anybody that's gotten it, and now we all know everyone who's gotten it. We know a ton of people who's gotten it. We all have friends who died from this. I mean, this is serious stuff, but it's like it's been such a weird year, man. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
it's such a crapshoot.
It's such a crapshoot. But you know what I am excited about is that you and I get to hang out on a different show. That's what I'm excited about, Josh Kanner.
For sure, man. Yeah, we got to connect up also on this New Orleans thing.
Oh, yes. I will be in New Orleans. I still go to New Orleans every month. I just wear a mask everywhere, right? And with me, my brother from another mother, Mr. Rob Galbraith. He's over there in San Antonio, Texas. He and I endured snowpocalypse. What would they call it? Snowvid 2021.
Nice.
I mean, dude, that was some snow and ice, and Texans are not prepared for it. You're a Michigander, so you like at least knew how to drive.
It was, yeah, it was glad that you are safe and your loved ones and
Yeah,
our
man.
producer Jim Greenlee and everyone over in College Station. But yeah, I think it was just surreal. I've lived in San Antonio for 20 years, and it was just an ordinary snowstorm, but we're not equipped at all in Texas. So like, I think we have a new appreciation for our northern neighbors. Instead of rubbing it in every week. Every time I talk to somebody up north, during the winter, I just try to make conversation, but rub it in, I guess, and say, "Oh, how's the weather?" And they're like, "Shut up, we don't care." And then they got their karma last week, so we were without power for 3 days, and
They got karma in
boiled
spades,
water
man.
notice and all that. Yeah, we got it back. So, but anyway, like you said, it was back to 70s. I think it hit 80 here this week. So
Yeah, man.
Crazy.
it's
I mean,
surreal.
I went and shot a round of golf on Wednesday. It was 72 and sunny, and I was like, "Did that actually happen?" Again, my memory. It's like, did I remember that correctly? Did we just anyway? It's a wild deal. We are going to geek out on Insuretech today. We're going to talk about how risk and tech and carriers are starting to really get with the program, pun intended, on this, and understand that if they actually help pay for some cost of technology in some regards, they can actually reduce their total claims cost, right, and drive their margins up, which is always good for a carrier. Healthy markets is healthy for the economy. And so we're going to talk about that. Josh and I, for the uninitiated out there, have known each other for a long time. And in the Constructech space, he's been a guest on my other podcast, The Content Crew. Today, I did have a guest from the Ryan companies on the Content Crew up in Minnesota, eh? And we were having a good laugh, don't you know, about the weather. But before we get started with my friend Josh here, we're gonna just to remind you, you can subscribe to our podcast by texting Geek Out to 66866. Just text Geek Out to 66866, and you can subscribe there. Make sure you never miss an episode. We email you the show notes and links to the news, and like who is on, and then you can catch the video or the audio. It's been really cool. And just want to thank everybody out there for becoming faithful listeners. It's been pretty much a year of episodes, right? So this is episode 51. So we're kind of at like a full episode year since we do like one a week. And we've built up a pretty good little group of folks that hang out with us every week and listen to us talking about Insuretech, and we're glad to have you on. Back to my esteemed guest, founder and CEO of Smartvid. And I say it that way because yours truly and my Insuretech friends don't know this, but I founded a product called Smartbid that I started in 2006, sold it in 2018. Josh, and I'm just going to give a little bit of your background since I happen to have, I know just a couple of points on your resume. Built this really, really cool system from 2005 to 2012. So kind of like similar time frame as I was running Smartbid. He built Vela Systems, which became the foundation for this really awesome program by Autodesk called BIM 360 Field, and it's still alive. It's alive. It's still alive. Like an incarnation of this is now Autodesk, and God bless them, they paid $1 billion a day for a water management program. Or yesterday, I guess they released that paid $1 billion for a water management platform. I mean, I think they've rebranded your product 3 or 4 times now, Josh.
Yes, it was originally Vela Systems. It's a construction field management platform for quality, safety, commissioning, and bringing 2D and 3D documents to the field.
Yeah.
That saved a ton of time and digitized a bunch of processes that were then, back in 2005. That was before the iPhone was around.
Yeah, you're using Windows Mobile.
Yeah. Speaking of short memories, my kids don't remember when there was a time we didn't have internet, that's actually an interesting game. If you guys ever want to play with that with your kids, is like, what existed when your parents were young?
Yeah.
And we started that off. And one of my kids said, like, you had no phones, you had no internet. My other son said, did you have forks? He jumped right there. But anyway, back to your thread, James. Yeah, it was, we automated a bunch of field processes, and then it became part of BIM 360. The Vela Systems name was gone within 2 weeks from us joining Autodesk.
They got like BIM 360 Field, and now they've done it. They keep wrapping it up into Autodesk Construction Cloud, and then they form this new concept called Build, and then it's like what? How many logos and brands do you need? But they keep rolling through this. In the meantime, in the last 9 years, you spent the year there. So I guess the last 8 years, you co-founded some really cool stuff. But in 2014, you founded and started Smartvid. That's VID
Mhm.
.io, Smart Video, which was doing some really, really cool machine learning on top of videos, right?
Yeah, we started with the concept of going back to our original customers at Vela Systems. These were both CIO level folks, but also just a bunch of field superintendents, folks out on the job site, and started talking about what's going on. It's now 2014, 2015, and it went from, hey, we need tools to be able to automate work in the field to we need help managing all the data we're gathering in the field. And that's where Smartvid got started, because videos and photos and all that visual data was really tricky stuff to manage. It still is. And over the last 5 years now, because we really started the company in 2015, over the last 5 years now, we've gone from how do you manage the data to, and well, the whole purpose behind me being on this podcast is what kind of critical insights can you get from that data? So not just making sure you don't lose it when there's a claim, but what can visual data and what can other project data tell you as like a signal of what's going on your job in a way that can be indicative of safety risk or of other risks on the project. And huge milestone for us this year, which we'll get into, is that insurance carriers have seen that signal, no pun intended, or maybe pun intended, and they're subsidizing the cost of our software on construction projects. So it's been a really big milestone. I'm super excited to be on this podcast to be able to talk about it.
Yeah, and it's the use of unstructured data is like the last frontier, right? To quote Jean-Luc Picard, second star to the right and on till morning, right? Like it's engaged, number one. I mean, this is really where we have to go, because most data, just like period, that's like world data, right? Like data in the whole world. Most data is unstructured. It's not sitting in a beautiful normalized relational database for all the fields are interlinked, and we have primary key and secondary key, and we have constraints, and all the data is perfect. No, that's not. It's just not the way the world works, right?
Yeah.
We've got exabytes of photos and exabytes. That's it. For those of you who don't know what that is, just go Google it and you can read the numbers. A lot of zeros afterwards. There's exabytes of photos and videos and free text, right? Like if I had to think of like unstructured data, pictures, videos, free text, and audio files. And when I first saw Smartvid, I was like, holy crap, he's actually doing something with all this, because you applied machine learning to all these pictures and started recognizing objects and then automatically tagging them, because people don't like to actually tag photos they upload. In fact, most companies, and let's just not talk about construction. Let's keep this specific, let's keep it general here. Most companies don't like to categorize all their photos and videos because it takes too much time, right?
100%. Yeah, I think it's one of the least understood or appreciated features actually in the iOS and Android operating system on your phone, is that it's automatically looking at each photo that's uploaded and creating a whole tag. Think of it as a tag list. You just can't see it. They don't give you access to it. But if you search on your mobile phone, you go into the Photos app, and if you search on a word that's something that you would expect to see in a photo, like dog or cat or beer, like I do to find cans of beer that I may have, taken a picture of because it was good. Google or Apple is going to find that photo for you, even though you never tagged it with the word beer. And that's the beginning of where Smartvid got started.
Yeah, I mean, I use this all the time on my phone just to identify all the different things that golf, airplanes, cars, whatever it is.
Yep.
It's really quite amazing. Like, I just did beer. I didn't even think about searching for a beer tag. I don't take enough pictures of beer, Josh.
There you go. Well,
You know what's
come up to
cool
Boston,
though,
James.
is they actually
You got a lot of good beer.
This actually picked up a beer flight that I did.
That's pretty sweet. It must recognize the foam. Maybe it's
the foam, because that could easily be a shot round, but it's not.
Yeah,
it's a beer flight. So I mean, there's just amazing stuff going on with photos and videos and text. And then you started ripping the frames out of video and recognizing objects in the individual frames. And then you started ripping all the audio track off of video and then converting it to text. and then making it searchable so you could like jump to that frame in the video where someone said a word like hazard error warning issue, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's where we started actually. We started with
You
trying to
started with that.
Yeah, we wanted to transform because my roots are in the field, right? With the Vela system stuff, it was always about how can you streamline field processes first, take time out of people's day. And the whole process of taking pictures, documenting them, and locating them is really time consuming. So we started with the process of, well, instead of having to actually tag stuff verbally, on a plan, you could just say where you are and it would automatically tag it back. Now that stuff has evolved a lot in the last 5 years. You can now use like the internal, like the gyros and internal stuff on the phone to help put you on the plan and things like that. So what we evolved to though is that because there was still a ton of photos where people weren't going to be talking on top of their phone, is that our customers said, listen, we got all this other photo data, we got all this other image capture data, help us find it and then help us extract signals of risk. And that's where we started building out all these models that are tuned to the needs of in our industry in construction. Now we're up to over 100 of them, looking for specific indicators of risk. And because it's like anything with artificial intelligence, the more focused you can get, the better your models can be, as long as you have the data. So we've really focused on safety and other areas of construction. We do phases of construction as well. So you can be doing some automatic phase detection, which ties into risk. And that's been a huge focus of ours.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, let's bring it back to insurance. You did one of the coolest reports, and that's kind of nerdy to say. This is the coolest report I've ever seen, called the Glove Report. Your system automatically identified workers on any job site that were not wearing protective equipment. So you trained it to identify if a worker didn't have a reflective vest, gloves, or hard hat, or safety goggles. And then during COVID, you trained your system to identify if workers were wearing their masks or not, and you started publishing a nationwide, region by region mask compliance report, which I'm sure somebody here who works in innovation at a work comp carrier would find interesting, to be able to automatically track compliance rates with protective equipment for your workers.
Exactly right. Yeah. Social distancing too. And then you can do mix combos like not wearing a mask and not social distancing. That's clearly higher risk. And then that can trigger alerts and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Called quarantine alerts.
Yeah. It was pretty interesting, man. Also, like so by region, we saw the trends actually converge. So at the beginning of the pandemic, it was kind of like, if you read the newspaper, you would have predicted this. It was, the Southwest and Southeast were lagging in terms of their mask compliance and social distancing compliance. But about 9 months in, the whole country was above 90%. And, everybody just converged and kind of got religion on it.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, Rob, I've given you plenty of fodder there.
Yeah, no. So Josh, you guys have a great website, by the way, smartvid.io, as James mentioned, and we've got a really good video that kind of outlines the suite of solutions that you have. One of the things I noticed in watching the videos is it says that construction worker injury rates have not improved since 2007, and project productivity has also remained flat despite the increasing adoption of technology on job sites. So just kind of curious to have you expand on those thoughts, because you've spent so much time in this space. And what do you think, I guess, is the art of the possible? You're starting to see Smartvid and other capabilities kind of help it. It feels like we're really on the cusp of something big here.
Yeah, the statistics like that are really what motivates a lot of our customers. There's another one that's not on our website actually, that the vice president of safety at one of our customers at Shawmut Design and Construction used and told me about, that motivates him, which is that actually it's not just injury rate, it's that the fatality rate in construction is basically unchanged in 10 years. There's a graph that you can see around that, and something has to change, something has to give. So if you think about safety, you think about any kind of risk, or any kind of outcome that you want to try and affect, there's a concept of how much observations, how much data can you get to help try and understand the behavior and provide feedback on it. So in the case of safety, you're limited by traditionally you've been limited by how many safety folks you can have out there. And safety as a whole has been seen as kind of it can be more of like an audit kind of orientation or checklist orientation. What we're trying to do at Smartvid, it's not just technology, it's actually a whole approach to thinking about safety. It's getting more observations, more opportunities for engagement, more conversations about it, and doing that through the use of artificial intelligence. So you can think of the visual part of it as getting more, literally it's like having an automated safety inspector who never sleeps and can be looking not just for things that are wrong, but also for things that are right. And using that to be able to create a much tighter feedback loop with the team in the field and encourage opportunities for folks to have conversations about safety, have more engagement, and ultimately reduce incident rates because there's better visibility about what's happening, both what's not going right, but also what's going right. It helps. There's more to talk about. And if I were to if there's a safety professional on the phone, I would hope that resonates with them. We just did a webinar with Lithgow, one of our customers. They call it a culture of conversation, and they reduced their incident rate by 20% in the first year of working with us, not just because of us, they would say, but we were a big part of their program. Part of it was that they increased the number of conversations they were having about safety and having about what's happening in the field. So there's a huge opportunity to have more interactions, more engagement opportunities, more conversations about safety, and to use that to help drive better behavior and better awareness.
Yeah, I think that's really exciting. And to James's point earlier, we're just touching the iceberg, right? In terms of, we're just at the tip of the iceberg, I should say, and exploring the use of unstructured data. One of the things that I know that you have, in addition to like some of the AI, object identification, things like that, but really the predictive analytics. Can you talk a little bit more about how you leverage that?
Sure. Predictive analytics is, I'll use your iceberg analogy. It's like the tip of the iceberg, actually, with all the data coming out underneath it. It's really where we've been headed towards since our customers asked us, what data can you find to help us understand risk? Because once we started and built all of these visual indicators of risk, James mentioned PPE, we also can detect housekeeping. We can detect standing water. We do a lot in work from height, different kinds of how you work, not just objects like ladders, but this is new for us actually in the last quarter or so since last year. We can now also detect behaviors working at height. Are people working at height properly? Are they wearing proper safety harnesses or any kind of fall protection? So the step was, okay, now we can see those things. Those are opportunities for engagement, both on the positive as well as in the areas for improvement. But what and how can you use that to actually understand what risk is going to be? In other words, not just look at what things were today or even right now or backwards, but can you use that data to understand by trending? Because now you have more data than you ever had before. You used to be constrained by, who's filling out forms, who's doing field inspections, all this stuff. Now you got all this data. Can you actually use it along with other unstructured data to predict what's going to happen in the future? And I wish I could claim credit for all of this. It was actually our customers who came to us. One in particular, Suffolk Construction, they had hired a chief data officer, and she came from outside the construction industry. And she said, listen, we love what you're doing. What if we give you 10 years of data with all of our incidents in it? And let's combine that with the photo data and combine it with some structured data like observations and unstructured data. And let's see, can we does what you're looking at in the imagery, that signal, does it help add predictive power? Can we predict where we're going to have incidents based on what's being seen and this other unstructured data? And what we found that we could, this is a couple of years ago. We've been working ever since to systematize it and get it much more streamlined in terms of how we can pull in data, generate the predictive models, and generate results. And we really got it down to a science. We have multiple customers doing it. We're generating multiple predictions, not just from photos, but from weather. It's weather data goes in. We take in schedule. We look at like activity stacking. We're looking at manpower ratios of supervisory to trade and craft workers, a whole bunch of different features, hundreds of them actually, that then go into prediction of which job is going to be the riskiest.
It's incredible. And, I've actually been inspired. You guys have probably been reading about, right, the Reddit trade and the gyrations of GameStop and AMC theaters and all that. And so I've been kind of reading books about, quants and dark pools and high frequency traders. And part of what they do, right, is taking in this massive data sets and this data of different types and different variables, some internal data, some external data, structured, unstructured, putting it all together, right, and coming up with these complex algorithms, or algos as they call them, right, and then they try to, trade, right, based on that signal. And so it's a similar approach, just obviously focused on worker safety and site productivity.
Yeah, I also think, Rob, about underwriting models too, right? In the insurance world, like what does it mean to understand risk and to be able to underwrite risk and, write policies and write coverage? And that's the predictive stuff we're doing is taking us a lot closer to the whole insurance ecosystem. So we've been partnering. We started off partnering with brokers like Aon and Lockton and others, and then started working with AXA XL last year, and then now more recently with the Hartford. And that's actually behind some of the rationale behind them now paying for our software for their customers is that they are interested in not just the benefits to the customer on a given job site or set of projects, but they're trying to explore, Rob, also what is a future underwriting model potentially that could bring more of a dynamic type approach, kind of like we have in the consumer world with safe driver discounts. If you're sharing the data coming from your dash, like how you drive, how can that be done in the industrial world? Like, what's the equivalent of a safe driver discount in construction? What's a safe building discount, right? And what are the factors that go into that? That gets really interesting. Like in a car, if you're a consumer driving a car, I know if there's factors, right? Like if I step on the brakes really hard, or if I'm cornering too fast, or if I speed or whatever, like that's going to move my insurance. That makes me riskier, right? What is that in construction? And that's what we're working on and trying to figure out.
Yeah, let's try and close the loop on this tie-in with carriers, because there's got to be a defined, measurable benefit at this point for them to actually start not only doing like some type of premium discount, but just straight up paying for tech, right? I mean, 'cause there's a lot of ways to slice this, but when they start footing the direct bill for the tech, something's resonated with the carrier. Tell me the story. Like where are they seeing the benefit enough that they're willing to actually carry a license cost for their clients?
Yeah, it's so the story for the Hartford, which, by the way, if a listener is interested in hearing this right from the Hartford, we have a webinar on our website that we just delivered with Brett Bush, who's the head of the Hartford strategy and IoT group, and where he describes this whole journey that they were on. Where basically what they look for technologies like you're saying, James, that have a demonstrable benefit. So they've rolled out a bunch of different tech that they're now subsidizing for their insured. One of them is water loss prevention tech. So you can put in basically a whole bunch of different technologies that actually, some of them it's pretty cool. They actually use AI to learn the flow, like what's the normal flow on that job, and then if they see something that's out of tolerance, then they'll alert. They've also done work with more traditional IoT stuff, so sensors on folks. And now they're working with us because our customers are seeing things like I mentioned Lithgow with a 20% incident rate reduction. Another one of our customers last year, despite COVID, and we're actually seeing this quite a bit. I'm interested in, I know this isn't the construction podcast, so maybe I won't focus there, James, but in construction, where some of our customers had their best years ever last year, despite COVID. It's kind of crazy. And this is one of them. They had more work hours than ever, but they had 73% fewer lost time hours. So it's those kind of statistics, James, that I think are giving the carriers the ammunition that they need, the progressive ones, the ones that are really trying to understand how they can help their customer and how they can start to rewrite the way insurance is underwritten, to put it a certain way.
Yeah, I mean that's really where the rubber hits the road, and it is hard for many in insurance to get their hands around the actual data that you just talked about. Like you're talking about significantly less claims. Right,
Mm-hmm.
it's not like a measurable material amount of less claim. Now, part of it's observation effect, right? if you have technology that is observing, and like you can call it Big Brother all you want, but if you have every single image and video being processed and people are actually analyzing what's going on, there is a bit of observation effect. Just by observing people, they tend to behave better, right?
I would agree with you if it wasn't construction. Like, we're, you know what I mean? But it's, what our customers are, they're using our stuff across 150 jobs, right? And it's one thing to observe, whether you're a human or an AI. It's another thing to connect that observation to a process that actually helps reinforce and drive the right behaviors. And so I don't think it's just the observation effect. In other words, I think it's got to be tied to a good program that not only looks at negatives, looks at positives and reinforces those opportunities for conversation.
So we've heard what the most valuable feature set is out of Smartvid for the contractor. What is it for the carrier? What do they really care about? The compliance rate for PPE, what near misses? I mean, what are they looking at in the software?
Yeah, they've been very focused on the outcomes. Like you were saying, James, like they want to see reduction in incidents, both recordables and non-recordables. They want to see the outcomes. The more leading indicators, like the more behavioral type metrics or risk related metrics, are interesting in the context of predictive, because we can show how some of that data actually can be used to predict specific incident rates. But right now the carriers are just starting to get there. They're more interested in, all right, like what can happen on these jobs and how can we impact, the actual outcomes on these jobs, as opposed to, like, to your question, James, like what are the metrics they're interested in? Like that's more of a longer term thing that has to do more with like the more dynamic type or more messing with the underwriting model, which, as I'm sure you and Rob and the listeners know, is not an easy thing to do.
No, that's the kind of the golden goose, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to go modify your underwriting model, you better have reams of data to support it, or you're gonna be upside down pretty fast on your on your margin. Rob?
Yeah, Josh, maybe we can wrap up by talking. I noticed you guys talk about some of the third-party integrations that you have with Autodesk and many other systems. And the sense that I get is kind of like, that you can really kind of, construction firms can kind of, incorporate this solution along with other solutions, right? And it integrates well, and you just kind of make it part of their standard process. Like there's not a lot of extra work. You point earlier about having to tag photos. I know, like recording, observations and things like that. But you're trying to really streamline this as much as possible and make it part of their daily work, their daily processes, where it's not like a bunch of extra work that somebody has to do, right? But you're gleaning all these additional insights and then being able to kind of, be part of a major piece of a suite of solutions that they're using just to kind of go about their day to day. Maybe we could just talk a little bit about that. I think about, embedded insurance or things where, it's not like you have to do this special one-off thing, right? But yet it's, you're getting that much more just from, kind of going about your daily routine. I think we that convenience is something that we underestimate when we're evaluating Insurtech propositions, and you have that.
Yeah, totally. I think the analogy again of back to the progressive snapshot, which is something you plug into your car's system, and it gets data and helps you with. We take the same approach. You can plug Smartvid into your existing construction management system like Autodesk or Procore. Or you can plug it in if your imagery is in Box, or if you're using a site camera, which we have site camera companies we work with and recommend. You don't have to change. You don't have to change, or shouldn't have to change the way you work. It's just like you don't. Well, you may be more conscious of the way you drive, but you're just going to drive the car. You're just going to run your job the way you normally would. And now there's more data about it, and data that you can use to help drive a better, safer outcome.
Yeah, and the analogy I would use actually is kind of the telematics now that sync to your phone, where you don't need that dongle, right, to capture it.
Totally. Yeah, you're right. Hey, you're right.
You've got your car. You've got your phone, right? You're going about your day, but now we've enabled to unlock this capability where you don't actually have to take that interim step of having to get this special hardware device and find that OBD port on your car.
That's true. Yeah, it's actually really, there's a company here in Boston actually that did that was one of the first ones to do that, to use all the stuff on your phone to help with driving data. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's the carrier is trying to help, trying to help the insured be safer and reduce loss. How do you bend the loss curve is the question that the carriers have been asking us, and that's what we're really eager to do. It helps everybody.
They have a moral and financial incentive to do it, right? Like we have a moral obligation to help people, just in general, like as human beings. Decent human beings want to help others, and the really beautiful thing about being in insurance is you have an opportunity to directly impact life outcomes of people by making sure they go home as good as or better than they showed up in the morning. Hopefully with a good stretch and flex program, they actually go home better than they showed up. And then you can prevent accidents, and you can also help companies be more profitable, which is good for the economy, good for employment, not just good for the owners, but good for bonuses. There's a whole lot of bonus pools that are based on profitability. So generally everybody wins. A safer job site, everybody wins. And the insurance carrier is one of those, but their insured is another one. And it forms, in my opinion, a new type of relationship between the carrier and the insured when you're buying tech. I know, for example, Josh, I just renewed my cyber policy, and they pay for a whole suite of software tools for me for penetration testing and analysis. I mean, it's completely provided by my carrier because they recognize that by providing those, they're helping me be a lot safer, right? And so this is not abnormal, but what we're seeing is, in this type of regard, this is abnormal. This is really, you're one of the few that have been able to pull off something like this. So congratulations on this, and also to the carrier partners that you're working with. I want to wrap up our conversation. We only got a couple minutes left. Rob's getting used to this question after 51 episodes. What do you see coming in the future, right? This is the now. Carrier partnerships and machine learning and video and photo and text and speech analysis. That's all stuff you've already done. What's the next mountain to tackle?
Yeah, I think it's starting to look at the underwriting models themselves, because it's, as we work with our more sophisticated customers, James, like they're trying from their own risk management standpoint to have it's an equivalent of an underwriting model. They're trying to understand which jobs are riskiest and where should they focus their attention, not just on the safety front, but across other dimensions of project delivery risk. So one way this goes is I see those kind of coming together. There's carriers who are looking to offer new products are going to look to enable those with these new kinds of underwriting models to deliver more value to customers and also to get to improve outcomes. So I think that's where it goes, is you're going to see more products that are underwritten with these kinds of as more data becomes available, because it's what our customers are trying to do themselves. And it's also, I think it's the right business decision. Otherwise, there's going to be other companies that come out there. There's going to be other insurance firms that are going to disrupt them, that do those things, that do come up with these new models based on the additional data that's available.
That's awesome. Rob, any closing comments or questions?
Just one comment, and I think I love that. That's where you're going, Josh. And for a long time now, probably a decade or more, companies have been collecting data. There's been this kind of discounts for data, right? Whether it be telematics, smart home devices, and many other things. And there's been all this data collection of unstructured data, but incorporating that into underwriting models, into pricing and loss models, right? That's the part that we haven't seen before. So just really excited that that's where you're headed. And I think that makes just a ton of sense, that you're not just looking on the last 3 to 5 years of loss history data to price a given risk or to underwrite a given risk, but you're looking at what is the behavior today, right, on the job site. And to the extent that they self-correct or course correct or make improvements, that be reflected, hopefully immediately in more positive either rate or getting to be covered by more competitors competing for that piece of business, where maybe it's something that in the past, it's like, oh yeah, call us 3 years from now when your loss ratio improves, your experience mod changes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. In the consumer world, think about how much data Google has about us now. Like if you have a Nest device, or if you've got Alexa, Google or Amazon, right? You've got a Nest device for Google. Amazon knows your buying history. You've got Alexa in your house. Maybe it hears your mood and your voice. What if those companies started offering consumer insurance, right? Like, holy cow, do they know a lot about people? So I think it's really going to be this whole concept of how do you use more data to get a better understanding of risk is really gonna be core to insurance underwriting models for a long time.
Yeah, that I'm a tech futures optimist, utopian future guy, not a dystopian future guy, but that one creeps me out a little bit.
Yeah,
And
doesn't it?
and
Yeah.
the interesting thing is that Amazon tried the whole insurance thing and they just bailed out, right? They tried to come in and disrupt health insurance, and they're like, never mind, we're out.
Are you talking about that health insurance thing they did with
Yeah,
JP Morgan?
JP Morgan. Yeah,
Who else was in that? There was another one.
yeah, it was
Was it
Amazon.
Berkshire Hathaway
and-
or yeah?
yeah, I think.
Oh
I
yeah,
thought
was it Buffett? Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Yeah, they're out. They closed it down. They're like, never mind. It was Amazon, JP Morgan Chase, and Berkshire Hathaway.
Berkshire Hathaway.
They-
Yeah,
they
that's health
announced this-
insurance though.
They
And
announced this November of 2019, February 2021.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Yeah, health. Oh man,
Yeah,
that could be a
health-
whole series of podcasts on how
health's a mess.
screwed up all that is.
We switched to Amazon Pharmacy for our pharmacy though,
Mhm.
and they kick Walgreens and CVS in the pants. So,
I think that's
Just-
a Boston company, man. I think that's PillPack underneath.
well, PillPack and Pharmacy are different parts of Amazon.
Oh really? Okay.
Yes. So they're both operating. You can sign up for both, but they are not connected or integrated in any way whatsoever.
Wow, I didn't know that.
So I use both. If you haven't signed up for PillPack, I do it for all my vitamins.
Yeah.
Take my glucose, all my old man vitamins that keep
Yeah.
my joints from creaking.
Is that the one? Did you take the joint one? That's the,
Yeah, glucosamine chondroitin. Yeah, I do
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah.
I do my vitamin D for my ligaments, and I do my men's multivitamin. Do my my allergy meds. So
Yep.
all PillPack just mails you a box with a roll of stuff, and you just tear the package open every day. It's
Yeah.
phenomenal for traveling because you don't have to remember anything. You just tear off whatever days are going to be gone, and that's what you travel with. PillPack's amazing. Totally separate from Amazon Pharmacy, who will just literally ship you your bottles wherever you are. And I mean, Amazon's really disrupting a whole bunch of things. I think they'll eventually crack insurance. They have to. It's too big of an industry for them not to be in. And so I think eventually we'll be able to this push to dramatically streamline underwriting and binding and quoting is going. Like Rob, I feel like we're in the baby stages of it right now. Like just the baby stages of quoting risk and getting bound.
Yep.
And
Totally agree.
you know what I mean? Like,
Big change over the next decade. Yeah.
it's gonna be a sea change. It's gonna freak a lot of people out.
I think it's a really interesting theme, guys, across the business world too, of like where are the centers of gravity of data, right? If you think about enterprise systems, what can they tell you about the risk of the companies that are using them, and how can those enterprise systems, like in construction, I think, well, how much does Autodesk know about folks in their ecosystem? How much does Procore know, and how does that then tie into potential future revenue streams for those guys?
Yeah, it's huge deal. Well, Josh, it's been great having you on the Insuretech Geek. Appreciate it. I do want to give some time to Mr. Rob for a couple news items that we have.
Yeah, just real quick this week, James, I saw that a Canadian insurtech called Farmers Edge has raised $100 million IPO. That's $100 million US, by the way, 125 million Canadian. And this is a company that actually I had done some presentations at a conference last year called Agricon. In fact, I was in Sacramento right before everything shut down in the pandemic. And so they were one of the companies I highlighted. They use technology and artificial intelligence, which we've been talking about today, to collect and analyze local weather, soil moisture, satellite imagery to help growers boost crop yields and farm more efficiently. And they can also integrate in with, crop insurance solutions and things like that. So very similar to what we've been talking about with Josh today, but on the agricultural side. So anyway, that was kind of an eye-popping amount and not something that you might have guessed that there's an agriculture insurtech out there. And then the other thing I just, kind of shameless plug, we've had Ron Glossman from Chisel AI on the podcast previously, and they've put together their second annual underwriting priorities for 2021 and beyond called the Digital Evolution of Commercial Insurance. And so I contributed to this ebook that's online, as well as many other folks. It's a free book. You just have to register with them to be able to download your copy. So you can kind of get my thoughts as well as many other folks if you go to the site and register and download the free ebook from Chisel AI.
Outstanding. Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it as always. And again, Josh, good seeing you today.
Great to see you guys. Appreciate the chance to come on here and talk about the new stuff we're doing in the with insurance carriers. It's a pretty exciting time.
It is awesome and super applicable outside the construction industry. I just want to point that out. There's
Indeed.
all kinds of applications for your technology and others outside of that. But we are out of time. Thank you for joining us today. It has been yet another episode of the Insurtech Geek Podcast powered by JB Knowledge. That's jbknowledge.com, all about technology that's transforming and disrupting the insurance world. I've been your host, James Benham. That's jamesbenham.com, with co-host Rob Galbraith, endofInsurance.com. Big thanks to Jim Greenlee, our podcast producer, and Kara Daltonar, our creative producer. Thank you for joining us today. We're taking you on a journey through insurance tech. So enjoy the ride and geek out. See you next week.